The Xbox 360 era had one of the most vast and versatile gaming libraries of all time, and recently I was trying out a bunch of titles from that era to see which still held up not only graphically and visually, but gameplay wise in 2022. I want to mention that I tried to avoid putting any series or games that have had remasters, being that the remastered version will most likely be the one you want to play. For example, the Mass Effect and BioShock trilogies, although those games still hold up fairly well, they all have been remastered with updated graphics and smoother gameplay. So here is my list of 10 Xbox 360 games that you should be playing in 2022. Number 10, Fable. Fable is an action RPG series that is exclusive to Xbox and PC gamers. The first came out in 2004 and was one of Microsoft's first real big exclusive hits in the video gaming world. This is one of the first games to introduce the good and bad choice system, changing how characters and dialogues would play depending on if you decided to be a hero or a villain in your story. The only complaint I have with these games is that they were not long enough. Each story gives you about 20 to 30 hours of gameplay, and if you do all the side missions, you're probably looking at an extra 10 to 15 hours, which is kind of short, kind of the size of my little dick on, for RPG games. Not very long, but in 2022, the majestic world of Fable games still all look and play great, although the first one hasn't aged as good as the second and third one. These games have all received frame rate upgrades, so if you have the newest Xbox console, then you can play these at 60 frames per second, but even if you don't have the newest Xbox, I still think these games are definitely worth playing. They hold up fairly well, they still look good, still play good, so definitely give the Fable games a try sometime this year. Number 9, Dead Space. The Dead Space series first debuted back in 2008 and is widely considered some of the best horror games of all time. And I know Dead Space 1 is set to have a remaster released sometime later this year, but even so, the first game, despite not holding the test of time visually, the gameplay mechanics still absolutely do. The second game is my personal favorite in the series. Visceral Games took everything they did right with the first Dead Space and expanded upon it with the sequel. And yes, it might be a tad bit less frightening for some, but it's still a fantastic horror game and less repetitive than the first. Either way, you can't go wrong with whichever one you choose to play in 2022. But here's a word of advice: do not, and I mean absolutely do not 100% play the third game. Dead Space 3, it was a complete letdown and nothing like the first two games. Number 8, Bully Scholarship Edition. Now, a common trend you're going to see with my list is I have quite a few Rockstar games on it. And why, you might ask? Because they're fucking incredible, dude. Rockstar makes games that simply don't age, and I admit visually Bully doesn't look breathtaking and it's definitely not going to give you any orgasms while playing it, but the gameplay has aged like fine wine. The best way I can explain Bully is it's basically Grand Theft Auto, but as a high school student. It's open world, it's got a lot of comedic elements, and has a very well put together story. Not to mention the main character Jimmy is very likable. I'm still disappointed we have not seen a sequel for this game. I mean, there was rumors years ago that they were making a sequel, and then they said they canceled it, and then I don't know what's happening, but this game, without a shadow of a doubt, needs a sequel, and until we get a sequel, Bully Scholarship Edition, the first one, is still a great game to play. Number 7, Fallout 3. The third installment into the Fallout franchise is one of the most critically acclaimed RPGs of all time, and for a good reason. This game is a first-person shooter with RPG elements set in a post-apocalyptic world with awesome enemies to fight, tons of loot to find, and endless customization. And I haven't even mentioned the DLC, which is also incredible. The gameplay still holds up after all these years, and even visually it's not that bad to look at. This game, as well as Fallout New Vegas, have both received frame rate upgrades on the Xbox Series X and the Series S, making the experience that much more exhilarating. Personally, I think Fallout 3 and New Vegas are still the best Fallout experience you can get. Even in 2022, yes, Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 look a lot sexier, but the story of 3 and the overall game easily surpass 4 and 76 in every which way imaginable. If you're looking for an RPG game to get lost in, and want to have no life for the next month, then look no further than Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Number 6, Max Payne 3. I told you guys earlier there's going to be a few Rockstar games on my list, baby. And like I said, Rockstar games simply do not age when it comes to their gameplay. Max Payne 3 has some of the best shooting mechanics. The gameplay itself is so brutal and so damn satisfying, especially when doing your slow motion animation kills. The story is fantastic, and Max himself is one of the more intriguing video game characters out there. And I know it might not seem so, but visually this was one of the better looking games for its time, and even playing it now, it still doesn't look that bad. This game hasn't received any frame rate upgrades yet, and even so it still runs and plays great in 2022. You'll get about 15 hours of action-packed, first-person shooting greatness with Max Payne 3. And guys, listen, just listen to me. If you haven't played this game, go to the store, go online, do whatever the hell you have to do. Buy this game. It's less than $20. I think so. You should be able to get it for less than 20 bucks. And play it. That's all I can say. Just play this game. If you don't play it, you just have to play it. I'll know if you played it. I have a camera under your bed. Number 5, the Call of Duty games. Now, I couldn't specifically pick which Call of Duty. I was going back and forth. Should I pick Black Ops 1? Should I pick Black Ops 2? Should I pick Modern Warfare 3? Should I pick... I didn't know which game to pick, and I was almost about to have a stroke doing it. So I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to pick all of the Call of Duty games. All of the ones that still exist on the Xbox 360. They are all worth still playing. Most of the multiplayers are still active. Some of them, don't have too many players online, but even if you can just play it with your friends, the zombie mode on the Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2, 100% worth still playing. And then the campaigns still hold up to this day. The gameplay mechanics, you don't have to worry about that. A lot of people prefer the gameplay mechanics for the Call of Duties nowadays, but honestly, back then, they were just as good, if not better. These games all still hold up and all still feel great, as well as look great in current year. Number 4, the Gears of War games. Now, similar to Call of Duty, I didn't know which one to specifically pick, so I just said fuck it and chose the entire franchise. Gears of War 1 has already been remastered, so no need to play that one, you can just play the remaster. But 2 and especially 3 still look beautiful a decade after the releases. And especially 3, like geez, look at it. It looks stunning as ever. I couldn't believe my eyes going back and playing it at 60 frames per second on the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X. It looks like a game that just came out recently. As far as these games themselves, do I even need to talk about how great they are? One of the best third-person shooter experiences you can get in gaming, and with an amazing story and some of the most beloved characters in gaming to boot. There's also still some players on the multiplayers, which is great. Whatever Gears game you pick to play in 2022, you cannot go wrong. Number 3, Far Cry 3. Now, I know I said earlier I wasn't going to choose any games that have had remasters, but Far Cry 3's remaster was an absolute joke. It was basically a port and looked the exact same as the 360 version, so that's why I included it. Anyways, Far Cry 3 is a first-person open-world game in a tropical setting. This game has such a great story, and Vaz, who's one of the characters in the game, is easily one of my favorite video game villains of all time. Probably just favorite characters of all time in general. The setting for this game fully immerses you, and visually Far Cry 3 still looks good despite coming out over a decade ago. The gameplay mechanics in all the Far Cry games have always been solid. This is a must-play for any first-person shooter fan, and hell, even if you're not a fan of first-person shooters, it's simply worth playing because it's an amazing story arc. You will not, and I mean not, be disappointed. In my humble opinion, this is easily the best Far Cry game that we have seen to date, and 100% still worth playing in 2022.
I don't like the way you are looking at me. Okay? You have a fucking problem in your head. Do you think I'm bullshitting you? Do you think I'm lying? Fuck you!
Number 2, Red Dead Redemption. Now, if you haven't played the Red Dead Redemption series, first of all, I'm going to come find where you live and I'm going to strap you down to a chair and I'm going to force you to play this game because it cannot be passed on. Red Dead Redemption, the first one, as well as the sequel, are 2 of my favorite games of all time. It's a third-person Western shooter where you play as John Marston, one of the more interesting characters in video game history. It's got a great story, it's got tons of side missions to do, and it's a Rockstar game. So like I mentioned earlier, Rockstar games just simply don't age. And another thing with Rockstar is the world fully immerses you. You could literally get lost in this game for hours on end. Like, you don't even have to be doing a mission necessarily. You could just free roam and you'll have fun for hours and not even realize the time passing by. This game has aged very well, still a lot of fun in 2022, and a must play in my opinion. And number 1, Left 4 Dead 2. Now, I was debating putting both Left 4 Dead games here, but honestly, going back and playing them, I think the second one has aged a lot better than the first. Either way, these are 2 of the greatest zombie games of all time, indisputable. And I know there's been games throughout the years that have tried to replicate some of the magic, like Back 4 Blood, which came out last year, but nothing has really come close. And I must say, you are not going to play these games for their story, which is pretty generic. You're 100% playing these for their fast-paced, high-octane gameplay, which still feels incredible even today. Left 4 Dead has some of the coolest zombies, and you can also play this game cooperatively with 3 friends, and if you don't have friends, that's okay. You can play this by yourself, all alone like I did, and you'll still have just as much fun. Also, to anyone working at Valve, where in the shit is Left 4 Dead 3? Who do I have to beg? Whose dick do I have to suck to get another one of these games? Because it needs to happen ASAP. So there it is. There's my list of 10 Xbox 360 games that I think still hold up great in 2022. And before you go down in the comment section and scream at me and say, hey bitch, I don't agree with all these games on your list and you're an asshole and bitch, I want you to die. Just calm down. Tell me which games you guys think should have been on this list. I know there's a bunch of honorable mentions that I left off. Portal 2, the Dead Rising games. I could just go on for days mentioning all the great 360 games, but let me know if you still play any 360 games. Let me know which ones. What's your favorite Xbox 360 game from that era? And leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll kiss you guys later. Peace.